Hey everybody, welcome back to the Advent of Code. My name's Lee Work, and we're going to be doing day one. All right, so let's check out the website on adventofcode.com. This is my account. You sign in with GitHub, and on day one, the first challenge, which I had to read a whole bunch of times, so if this kind of scrambled your brain, it did me too. We need to take a module and calculate how much fuel it takes based on mass, which is way more sciencey than it actually is. But basically, the formula is you take a number, divide it by 3, round it down, and then subtract 2. And then you take all of those numbers and add them together to get the answer. So if you scroll down and click to get your puzzle input, you'll get a page like this with a whole bunch of numbers. And so you need to calculate the fuel required for each one of those module masses. So I've got VS Code open, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a input.txt file. Okay, and we'll open that, jump over to Advent of Code, grab all of these values, paste them in. Okay, so now we're going to be doing this in Python for this video. I'm going to do another video in JavaScript, but yeah, let's check it out in Python. So let's make a .py file. Call this rocket module.py. Right, and then we need to have Python installed. So want to make sure that you want to check that. You can do Python -- version, and that says, hey, demo, you've got 3.7.3. And this base is because I have Conda installed. So little context, I've been trying to learn Python for a long time. So I've messed around with Python previously, and I installed Conda, and I messed with virtual environments. So doing this challenge today, I messed around with that a whole bunch and spent like 2 hours playing with virtual environments and Conda and all that junk. And for this challenge, you don't even need that. So don't worry about that right now. We don't need a virtual environment. We're just going to use baked in Python stuff. So we'll open up rocketmodule.py. Okay, and the first thing that we need to do is we need to be able to grab these values in Python. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to use open, which is part of the standard library for Python. So we're going to need OS for that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the location of this input.txt file. So we're going to say like file path equal to os.path.join. Then we're going to do dot because it's in the directory that we're in right now. We're going to join that with the file name, input.txt. And I'm not really sure if this is necessary. I was kind of looking up guides online. So if you know if I don't need to do this, like please let me know in the comments. But in any case, this will grab that file, and then we want to use with open the file path. And I believe, not quite sure what the R is for. I think the mode. Anyway, we're going to alias this as file handler. And inside here, that should give us the actual file that we've read. And then to read that, we're going to call file handler.read. So let's see if we can just like print this directly. See what we've got. So we'll save that. A little dot up there in VS Code lets you know that you need to save your file. And let's jump down here to the terminal. And we're going to do Python rocketmodule.py. And there we go. So that reads all of our numbers, which is a great start to this. So now the next thing that we need to do is we need to be able to grab these values and loop over them whenever we're doing our operations, because we want to take all of them and do some math to them and then add them all together. So to do that, first we want to be able to loop. So Python has a handy method for strings for that. So we're going to do our values are equal to, actually, let's call this, yeah, we'll call it values, and then we'll say lines is equal to values dot split lines. Now if we print lines, we'll see that we get a list. I want to call this an array because I'm a JavaScript person, but this is actually a list in Python. So it's a list of strings. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is want to loop over this list and do some math. So we want to do a loop in Python, use this for in syntax. So for line and lines, and then we want to get the calculated fuel value. And so we're going to do some kind of math to line, which will be our variable here. So if we just go ahead and print this calculated fuel value, see what we get. So prints these all out just like before. But we want to make them an int. Yeah, you can't really tell that from the console, but so let's go ahead and do that up here. And then remember the challenge said, okay, so the challenge says we're going to take that mass and divide by 3, round down, subtract 2. So to do that in Python, we're going to divide by 3, and then to round, we have to use the math standard library. So we're going to import math, do math.floor, and then subtract 2. So that should give us how much fuel we need for each value. And then in order to add all that together, easiest thing to do is just create a variable outside of this function, and we're just going to add it. So answer is equal to answer plus calculated fuel value. Then at the end of this, we're just going to print answer and see what we get. All right, so we get 3,422,661, which is the answer. Awesome. So it took me a little bit to do this. I had to look up file handler. I had to look up split lines. I needed to look up open, how to read files. File path I'm still not 100% on. But I know that in JavaScript, like I wouldn't want to reach outside of my loop and do this, and I probably wouldn't use a for loop. So I wanted to be able to do that in Python too. And so let's check out how to do that a little bit differently. So we're still going to use a lot of the same stuff. We're still going to use open. We're still going to jump into file path and loop over this list. But is it possible to do this with a lambda? So in JavaScript, I would probably use like an array method, like a reduce, to do this. So it turns out that you can do that in Python, but you have to pull it in from another library. So we're actually not going to print that there. Well, Let's bring this up over. So now, first of all, we have to import reduce. This always messes me up because I'm used to JavaScript, which is the other way. So it's from functools, which is short for function tools, but it makes me think of like funk music. So import reduce, or from functools, import reduce. I always want to think import reduce from functools. Okay, so call reduce. And then to do what would be like the JavaScript equivalent of an arrow function in Python, you use what's called a lambda. And so lambda has this weird syntax where you give the arguments and then a colon. So we're going to do, this is the accumulator. So like that's the thing that you're adding everything to and you reduce. And then B is like your current value. So why don't we actually like be explicit, say that. Okay. And then for the accumulator, we want to, on each loop through, we want to add to the accumulator and return it. So lambda is going to do this automatically, kind of like I said, an ES6 JavaScript arrow function. So we're going to use like the same formula as before. And for good measure, I don't know if this matters or not, we're going to wrap this in another parens, just to make sure that this operation happens in the right order. So divide by 3, round down, subtract 2, and then another argument for a reduce, if we look, you can give it the initial value. So that would be what your accumulator is going to start off with. So that should be 0. Oh, and we also need to pass it the sequence of values. So we gave it the function first, which is our lambda. Then we want to give it lines and then 0. So this is kind of getting a little bit long, but let's see. Whoa, this code's freaking out. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to do Python rocketmodule.py, and we get a different number on this second loop through. So what did I do wrong? Oh, so we don't want to use line, we want to use current. So take current, which is inside our loop. Line, I think, is, I don't know where it was getting line from. Probably was just adding all the values up, but all right, so let's try this again. There we go. So now that's how you do this with a lambda. So it seems like looking at and reading a lot of Python code, everything is about like smashing it down into a one-liner, getting it as like concise as possible. And I can appreciate some of that being a JavaScript developer, but Python definitely blows my mind with some of that stuff. But reduce is kind of like old hat to me, working in JavaScript, so I really wanted to try that. So that's the first part of the challenge. The second part of the challenge, which again I had to read like a bajillion times, is to basically like calculate the fuel requirement of the fuel as well as the mass. So in this first part, we have like modules that have a weight, and then we have to calculate how much fuel it takes to propel that module. In the second part, we have a module, and then we calculate the fuel to propel it. But then the carrying cost of that fuel, we then have to use the equation again to calculate how much fuel it takes to compensate for the weight of the original fuel, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. But basically, having done programming before, I know that this is like a recursive problem. So we're going to use recursion for that. And don't worry if recursion kind of blows your mind. It's not that bad. Let's check it out. So we're going to do stuff very similarly to what we did before, except for now, we're not going to be able to do everything in a one-liner. So we're going to need to do something else here. We can go ahead and cut that. And we're going to make a function in Python. So to do that, you do this def keyword. And then we're going to say like get fuel. And that is going to take some kind of mass or weight or whatever you want to call it. And we're going to say that the fuel is equal to that thing before. But remember that this is going to be this variable or argument to the function. And then down here, we're going to say get fuel and pass in current. Now, this is kind of a micro optimization, but instead of converting this value, because this get fuel function is going to run recursively, instead of like casting to int over and over and over again, we're just going to do that one time when we give it the initial value. And then we're going to assume that get fuel just takes, an integer and not have to convert every value that we give it. So this will give us the fuel one time, but if we want to like recursively calculate the fuel requirement of the fuel, we're going to have to check this fuel variable and see how big it is. So if you read the problem, they say that they talk about negative and zero fuel. So negative fuel should be treated as if it equals 0. So basically, we're going to jump back into our code here and we're going to say if fuel is greater than 0, we're going to return fuel plus, we're going to call get fuel again. And we're going to pass in the current value of fuel. And then else, we're going to return 0. So if the fuel is less than 0, treat it as 0, basically return 0. So this will, actually my indentation is wrong. There we go. So this will calculate how much fuel we need recursively. Not sure why Pylint is freaking out right there. Checking out my notes from before. I think I'm missing a parentheses. I have one too many. There we go. All right. So let's run this again. And now we get 5,131,103. And that's the answer. So that is parts 1 and 2 of the day 1 challenge. I was not totally satisfied with this and wanted to make one more optimization. So instead of doing this if-else in Python, you can actually do a ternary operation, which again I had to look up. In JavaScript, it's like a question mark and a colon, but in Python it's totally different. So let's check that out. So in Python, we could just do the return statement once, and we would do fuel plus get fuel, and pass in the fuel for the recursion, if the fuel is greater than 0, else return 0. So we're going to return fuel plus get fuel if fuel is greater than 0, else we're going to return 0. I think this is a little bit more readable than JavaScript's ternary operator, but yeah. Still works. Pretty cool. So that is a solution for day 1 of the advent of code. I'm also going to do this in JavaScript, so check out that video. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how you're doing in advent of code. and I will see you on day 2. All right, bye.